It is 6 o'clock p.m. I will call this meeting of the Miami Township, Montgomery County, Ohio Board of Trustees to order. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Posey.
Here.
Mr. Morris. Here. Mr. Culp. Here.
Chief Stiegelmeier, you have the reading of casualties.
Good evening, Board. The following is the first responder list for the period of February 16th through March the 1st, 2022. K-9 Maya, West Jordan Police Department, Utah. End of watch February 17th, 2022. Police Officer Nicholas Vela, Huntington Beach Police Department, California. End of watch February 19th, 2022. Deputy Constable Neil Adams, San Jacinto County Constable's Office, Precinct 1, Texas. End of watch February 23rd, 2022. Police Officer Jorge David Alvarado Jr., Salinas Police Department, California. End of watch February 25th, 2022.
Will you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is recognition of guests and presentations, for which we have none. And now we have the consent agenda. I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Mr. Morris. Aye. Mr. Culp. Aye.
Next on the agenda is new business, Resolution 27-2022. Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mr. President. On January 18th, the board passed Resolution 13-2022, which created a parking bureau. And during the discussion period, there was some confusion on the section of trailer semi-parking, pods, dumpsters, extended parking. There was also the streets were not listed for the snow emergency, and we made it also, there were 3 people that were allowed to call a snow emergency. So we made some changes in this documentation that goes along with that resolution. The first change is under the section 1.2 titled trailers, semi-trailers, pods, dumpsters, and extended parking. And what we did is we added the term under C, parking is prohibited for all vehicles for all other vehicles not listed in section 1.2A. And that had to do with the semi-trailers and trailers. The other change we made, as I said, we added all the streets for the snow emergency. That list was compiled working with both the police department and Public Works. If you look at that, you may think that there's some other main arteries that should be in there, but those streets already prohibit parking on there, so there's no reason to add those into this list. And then finally, we limited to only the board present being able to declare a snow emergency. And I'm open to any questions anybody may have.
Any questions? All right, resolution number 28-2022. Chief Stiegelmeier.
Good evening again, Board. In your packets, you received a memo from myself as well as a resolution requesting the surplus some electronic surveillance equipment. Myself and the Detective Bureau just did some spring cleaning, trying to go through some inventory and came across this outdated electronic surveillance equipment. Most of it no longer works, but definitely the technology is far preceding what's going on this day and time. And I'm just asking the board to allow us to declare this a surplus so we can trade it in possibly for some new stuff and clean out our inventory. And I'll answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions for Chief Stiegelmeier? Third resolution today is number 29-2022. Mr. Mayberry.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Board. The park supervisor has completed research and found that we're able to get portable restroom services at some of our select parks in the park system at a lower cost for this year. So the resolution approves signature for those agreements with Rumpke.
I appreciate you doing the research on making sure that we're as cost effective as we can be with the township funds.
Thank you.
Public comments. Anybody wishing to speak today? I will close the public comment period, but just remind you that we do welcome public comment here and participation in these meetings. Now it's time for the consideration of the resolution, of votes of resolutions and motions. I will make a motion that we approve Resolution 27-2022, a resolution to amend Resolution Number 13-2022, the creation of a parking bureau, adoption of a non-criminal parking infraction violation, and creation of the positions of violations clerk and hearing examiner in Miami Township. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 28-2022, a resolution to declare surplus property and authorize the sale of said property.
I will second the motion. Any discussion?
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
I will make a motion that we approve Resolution Number 29-2022, a resolution to authorize the Township Administrator to enter into service agreements with Rumpke for portable restroom rentals. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
We have no public hearing. Any department head comments today? Any elected official comments? Mr. Newell?
I have none.
Mr. Culp? Mr. Morris?
I just read in the Thursday, February 24th, Miamisburg, West Carrollton News that the Miamisburg City Schools has joined the Open Ohio Checkbook Program. I'd like to compliment them on making that move toward fiscal transparency, and those who may have read that should know that our Miami Township has been on that system for over 5 years. So, thank you.
I would just like to send our sympathies and encouragement to those suffering in the Ukraine on any side of the war or the engagement, and encourage a democratic resolution as quickly as possible. It is now 6:06. I will make a motion that we go into a work session to discuss open township positions. Is there a second?
I will second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Culp?
Aye.
I would like to comment that we will be going from the work session into executive session and conducting no further public business. After the executive session, we will adjourn from that portion of the meeting. The executive session will be to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property in accordance with Section 50510 of the Ohio Revised Code. If premature disclosure of information would give an unfair or competitive bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest, and I think we may have an issue, but pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 G2. We will now be in executive session. Excuse me, work session, study session. I'll get it right at some point.